And let's now get his thoughts on trade, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s upcoming State of the Nation address, as well as the latest from the British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines. We have with us Executive Chairman Chris Nelson. Chris, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and a warm welcome to all your viewers, Stanley.
All right, thanks a lot for joining us. Now, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is set to address the nation next week. A lot of stakeholders want to hear a lot about the economy, his programs, how he intends to sustain all of his objectives and initiatives until the end of his term. Now, on the part of the British Chamber, what does it expect to hear from the SONA of the President?
Hey, Stanley, thank you very much. Look, we're hoping to see continuing focus, obviously, for the growth of the economy and particularly encouragements to foreign direct investments. And in that context, we're looking to see positive moves in terms of particularly key legislation that we have been advocating for, which are priority. And I'll just lay those out quickly. So that's the Cybersecurity Act, the E-Governance Act, and the Koningtadong Act, or known as the Open Transmission Act. And I think if those are passed, that gives a good signal. The other thing we'd like to see a reference to is on the economic performance. Inflation has been a very good figure, and congratulations, but that's also driven by food security, and we've been a key element there in terms of our pork exports from the UK, and we'd like to see a reference to that. And we'd like to see how we're going to further accelerate infrastructure investment projects to boost the GDP, which currently is estimated at 5.4, but I'm sure what we'd like to see is it at 6% or more.
Okay, you mentioned three pieces of legislation, Chris. These have been pushed by a lot of sectors, particularly British Chamber, for the President, for this government to prioritize. Now, when you talk about the last State of the Nation address, were there really significant advances that perhaps fostered better trade relations between the United Kingdom and the Philippines, and what were they so far?
So I think we've seen actually an improvement. I mean, the actual trading balance between the UK and the Philippines is an all-time high, 3 billion. It's now 61st in terms of UK's trading partners. I think linked to that has been the continuing efforts on reducing red tape and bureaucracy to therefore encourage MSMEs and SMEs to come to the Philippines and do investment. Specifically in terms of the UK side, we've seen the establishment of the Joint Economic Committee, which is a further upgrading in terms of the trading. And I would just link that to your, obviously, discussion on tariffs. The UK is obviously very keen to develop further trading relations. And in that context, is encouraged by the Philippines' plan to join CPTPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, of which the UK is a member. So I think what we've seen here is a further strengthening and the opportunities to see further. And of course, as you rightly mentioned in your broadcast, this is the remaining 3 years of President Marcos's administration. And we want to see that driven through, particularly on infrastructure, continued efforts on inflation, and above all else, reducing bureaucracy or anti-red tape.
And speaking of bureaucracy, red tape, ease of doing business, cutting red tape has been a resounding appeal, really, from a lot of foreign investors. Now, have you seen efforts from the government to address this concern?
Yes, we have, and we work very closely with Secretary Perez from ARTA. I'm proud to say the British Chamber is a champion of ARTA. We'd like to welcome the fact they did their grand fair. That was obviously in May, where they ran around obviously advocating with President Marcos on ease of doing business. And of course, they're publishing a reform handbook. So we have seen progress. Can more be done? For sure. I mean, I think what we need to work with and assist also is how, because of the multiple agencies, how we can facilitate those, and also with working with local governments to get that moving. And linked to that, if I may, Stanley, coming back to on legislation, e-governance is a key factor there. The Philippines has been recognized for that. And of course, linked to that is cybersecurity. If you have e-governance, you have to have improvements on cybersecurity.
All right. And speaking of, you mentioned a while ago about multiple government agencies really involved in a lot of these efforts. The British Chamber is hosting a mid-year briefing event. It will have in that roster the Department of Finance, you have the Department of Information, Communication and Technology, as well as the Trade and Industry Department. Now, Chris, what makes these particular government agencies essential when you talk about improving the investment climate?
Well, that's very good. So let me say we're very excited by our mid-year, and thank you for mentioning that. It's on the 31st of July. Department of Finance is critical. I had a meeting with Secretary Recto. Clearly, management of the economy is critically important, and as I said, well, you have to give full credit on their inflation and the work we've also done and potential growth rates. Let me also come to the Department of Trade and Industry. That's one of our closest working partners. We've had meetings with Secretary Roque. We've discussed with them in terms of how we can further develop trade relations. Alan Gepke is also, I believe, in Washington with the tariff discussions. We've had many discussions with him on improving relations, and he was at the lead meeting in March of this year of that Joint Economic Committee, JETCO. And on DICT, they perform a very important role. We've seen, obviously, there's a lot of discussion about the Open Transmission Act. We'd like to see that pass through. And linked to that, as noted by DSAT, is that if you're going to have e-governance, you have to strengthen, obviously, connectivity. And again, reinforcing that, they're playing a leading role in cybersecurity, which we have advocated long for, and for which the UK has resources. And I just want to say that we have leading members who are members of the Chamber, both CyberQ and also NCC.
And when is that mid-year report coming? When is that happening? And who else are joining?
Sure. So actually, we're going to get good support. That's on Thursday, the 31st of July. We will have speakers also from SGV. We'll also have a speaker from HSBC. And I'd just like to make the point that we've just come also from the PESA Investment Forum in London, where obviously that was hosted by HSBC, so that's going to be important. So we're going to have also Prude Life will be participating. So in terms of activity, and I just wanted to herald the fact that we're going to try and lead on from that work we did in London in June with Director General Panga. And that's really kind of excited the opportunities for companies to do business in the Philippines, both from a macroeconomic, the interest level in the Philippines is higher, and also the fact that PESA offers them opportunities, both in terms of obviously with the Create More Act, and also in terms of efficiency linked to reduced red tape and the fact they can set up quickly and invest, and also be present not only in the Philippines, but do work in Southeast Asia. And recently, of course, we've just done our labor briefing.
Okay, Chris, President Marcos only has 3 years left into his term. And with that time, what do you see as the low-hanging fruits that can be achieved in the field of trade relations with the United Kingdom and the Philippines?
Well, look, as I said, I think we see further upgrade. I think the PESA Investment Forum is one, and we'd like to see continuing visits to the UK and further developments. I think that's very important to grow that interest. We want to see, and I'm confident we can project the trade and investment trade to go from being 3 billion even higher. I believe also that we can look at, we've upgraded to a JETCO. How can we actually get that even to a higher standard? And in all the other contexts is to continue to grow what's important for us. On that context, I'd just like to talk about our export of pork. We're again working with the Agricultural Horticultural Development Board. They're coming in November of this year. And on top of that, I would just like to advocate the work we do with the Department of Agriculture. In that context, we'd like to see further issuing of the minimum access volumes and further imports to support the economy, which let's not forget, and particularly in regards to the pig herds, which have been devastated and continue to be impacted by the African swine fever, to further boost food, which helps food security. So I think in the next 3 years, Stanley, we're going to see a lot of opportunities. We also have a new ambassador, Sarah Hulton, who's coming here in September. And I think this all heralds great opportunities. And we look forward to the Philippines, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, joining CPTPP, another trading bloc, which will be another advantage for both the UK and the Philippines.
And Chris, you know, we know that we really have strong trade relations when you talk about agriculture, food, maybe some sectors that need to be tapped. One of which is, of course, the fact that UK is eyeing to tap shared service collaborations with the Philippines. Perhaps you can tell us more about the prospects arising from these partnerships.
Sure. I mean, I think there's always opportunities in shared services. The Philippines is outstanding in that area. It's been leading for many years. The UK, of course, like many countries, is looking at those opportunities. I think that when we go, as I was in London for the PESA, we also have discussions not just on PESA, but also opportunities to discuss. So I think those partnerships will continue to grow. One of the roles of the British Chamber is to work with leading business organizations in the UK and present those opportunities. We have the British Chamber of Commerce, that's kind of like an overall organization. We also work with the UK ASEAN Business Council. And of course, we have very strong relations with the Philippine Embassy in London. And there they have a section, obviously under the trade and industry, which is just, we again have just had meetings with them. So I think overall, Stanley, those collaborations will grow along with potential investments by or trading opportunities for MSMEs and SMEs.
All right. On another topic, Chris, the British Chamber of the Philippines just welcomed its first female chairperson, Sarah McLeod. If you can share with us what her priorities are, she takes the helm.
Sure. So first of all, of course, now I'm actually the executive vice chair. I was up until recently the executive chairman, and I warmly welcome Sarah taking over. Sarah McLeod will be our first female lady chair. And I think she brings with her a lot of experience. Sarah's been in the country a long time. She works for one of our companies that's a member, Q2. I think what she's going to bring overall is a long time experience in the Philippines, a desire to further strengthen British Chamber relations with other organizations, and to bring even more exciting events and opportunities for our members. I think it's great that we have Sarah as our first female lady chair. I think she'll bring a new perspective. She's been the vice chair before, she's been on the committee many times, and I think it's and it's going to focus and drive the chamber, which we're trying to do actually, is to continue to expand. For us to continue, we've got to keep growing, we've got to keep getting more relations and bringing more companies. And I just want to stress, of course, that we have amongst our over 300 members, many non-British companies, including well-known Philippine companies, and that's important as we develop that network, and Sarah will strengthen that overall.
And speaking of the other exciting activities, perhaps there are some events that you wish to talk about, Chris, before we close?
Sure, we've got one coming up very soon as well. It's our Manufacturing Summit. I think also that's an important element for the Philippines as we look and see coming forward how we can develop that. All of this helps to show and highlight opportunities in the Philippines. And of course, let me just reinforce again, which you've kindly mentioned already, which is going to be our mid-year event, which is going to be very important on the Thursday, the 31st of July. So these events, I think, all engender, and let me also make the point, we try to foster that and get that information back to our partners in the UK so that we have that continual flow of information and opportunities. So looking forward to that. We've had a very good first half of the year, and we're looking forward to that continue through into 2025.
All right. British Chamber of Commerce Philippines is Chris Nelson. Thank you so much again for joining us this afternoon. Have a great day.
My pleasure, and a warm welcome again, and thank you, Stanley, and to all your viewers.
All right, moving on. The 20